Speaking moistly, keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speaking Moistly. With me, as usual, on a Tuesday is Greg. Greg, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I had an itchy nose during my show this morning, and I just like my nose started itching again. I was gonna say I
Mhm.
forgot to wear my giant prosthetic
And
because I
you look great with the sunshine coming in there. Doesn't he look great, folks?
see
Make a
that right.
comment if you think this is
Tons.
the best lighting setup he's had.
Ooh, it is pretty good. It is pretty good. I took away all like all the lighting, all of it. I was just like, fuck it.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
swore to. There we go. I don't usually swear, but anyway, I took it all away. Back to basics. But yeah, the lighting is good, but it's going to get cold soon. I just wanted to. There was a storm rolling through, and I wanted to hear the storm. And then a fly flew in, and so the
You
fly
got
is on
you got
borrowed
your
time.
swatter. Yeah. And
I,
that fly, just as a segue, that fly is the nuisance to the Trudeau regime. And in this case, the fly was a viral trend of Canadians
yes,
saying Trudeau must go. I'm a regular Canadian. Here's a photograph of my face and my family. I'm a regular
or
person.
a
I have
cow. Yeah,
kids. And
yeah,
Trudeau thinks I'm an extremist.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
that fly got really big, and then they're with the swatter. We gotta kill this fly. We gotta
Half a
stop
million.
this campaign. This I mean, you obviously saw this. It had 500,000 tweets on Twitter.
Yep,
We've seen this hashtag before, Trudeau must go, but it was
yep.
coupled with a very powerful sort of almost kind of like a ALS bucket challenge sort of thing. You can
Yeah,
participate. Anyone can kind of like take a photo of themselves,
yeah.
just describe how you're a normal, hardworking Canadian. But Trudeau thinks I'm an extremist. And I was actually just talking to Marty up north. I just
Cool.
did an interview with him on my channel. He was the guy who first started, who made the first tweet. And it really was just like, a really good tweet.
It
You know how
was.
the
It was a
tweet,
great template.
yeah, it was a good banger tweet. Hey, I'm an avid
Mhm.
outdoorsman. I have kids. I
Well, I
work
heard.
hard. Trudeau
I
thinks I'm
heard
an extremist.
Yeah, I heard that there was accusations of the whole thing being bots. That was the Dean Blundell group was trying to accuse
So
it of bots. And like I've never seen a more organic thing happen. It was very, very just like it was a wave almost. You noticed it, and then Twitter was unusable. Everybody was doing it. It was unbelievable. There were some things that happened online that were similar, but not for a while. This was a huge thing to have happened on Twitter. And you're right, they took out a big fly swatter and they just were like crush.
mm-hmm,
That was
mm-hmm.
that. That was that.
Yeah, and it's really the same story, right? It's like, oh, this doesn't fit the narrative and it's becoming popular. We need to kill it. We need to strike it down. And but yeah, I think you're
Well, it
right.
was
It's
it was getting to the point of feeding on itself. It was going to become self-sustaining, like cold fusion or something like that. It was just like they were saying this hashtag is becoming self-aware. Get it.
no, but I mean we can't let that it's like to a lesser extent of how they killed the momentum of the convoy, right?
Yeah,
It's that's kind of what they're trying to do is just kind of shut it down. No, you guys are extremists. Stop posting your
stomp their foot.
photos.
Yeah,
Stop telling us your story, your
stop
cute
having a
Canadian
dance
story.
party.
And I
Yeah.
was I was talking to Marty, telling him like, traditionally, this is a story that CBC would love to cover. Like
Oh man,
imagine
they would be
imagine those
all over
people
this.
complaining about like straight white men and oh maybe that's huh. I wonder if there's
I heard
a
so there was
woke
a
angle to take on this. Anyway.
there's a breakfast television guy. You probably saw it. I didn't actually post it on my show today because when I saw it I didn't understand the context, and I as soon as he said I want to see the video one more time of Trudeau singing on the piano, I just closed it. I was like, I don't want to see the video one more time. Breakfast television, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what your opinion is. Typically we disagree, so I'm not going to sit through this. I don't think it's worth it. And then somebody recut it so that it starts at his opinion, and the guy's opinion is basically Trudeau's a doofus. What the heck does he think he's doing? He looks like an idiot and he's acting like an idiot. And anybody with brains would know that what he's doing is dumb. And then now people are saying that he's going to get fired for this. So there's floating termination for what's his name? Sid? Sid. I think it was Sid. And
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that by any means. But it's one of those things where you look at that and think, holy smoke. Like, I don't know. I was kind of hoping that we were going to turn some corner, something was going to happen, and we were going to get back to a sane world. But we've turned a corner and we've gone the opposite direction. We have really doubled and tripled down on, if you don't think like the rest of us, you're the problem. If you're not with us, you're the problem. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, yeah. I hope Sid gets fired because I want it to be I want things to accelerate. Like, people need to realize like, hey, uh this is the country we live in now, where if you publicly criticize
Okay.
the boss man, then you get let go.
If
Like that's not a characteristic of a free country. If
it's
that
not,
wasn't
no, I
clear
agree with you.
already,
But I want to,
here's another example of it though, to wake
no,
some
no,
people.
you saying like, let's accelerate this. I feel like there may be a flaw in this idea. And the reason I think that is because, if, say, you and I were joking around, tossing ideas around about how to push the envelope and really, really say with satire what needs to be said. And you said, let's get some giant breasts, and we'll pay a high school teacher to wear the giant breasts to school. We would probably say this might be a little bit too far. This is a little bit too, and then let's have him ignore all shop safety standards, and we'll just see what happens. Well, people will get angry about this. And I feel like what's going to happen is exactly the same thing. Is exactly the same thing. I don't mean to whisper, but it's exactly the same thing as what happened with the convoy, as what happened with Trudeau must go. And I think that the school board, they say this is gender ideology, and she is perfectly fine to. The dress code is for students. Actually, don't you know, Greg? The dress code is for students, so teachers can show up with
Yeah,
giant
the
prosthetic
teachers can
nipples.
dress like prostitutes. You didn't know that? Yeah, they can dress however they want.
It's
If
fine, right, teachers?
if they want to show off their areola to the class, that's completely up to
Both
them.
of their areola.
Oh gosh,
Uh,
it's ridiculous. So
right.
I hear what you're saying, but you know, I think it's a good thing, believe it or not. I think we're talking about this crazy. You've probably seen the images by now if you're following Canadian politics. The story of this. I don't. Is it a they? Is it a them? Is it a woman? I have no
Well, they're
idea.
invoking, yeah, they're saying that there's some gender ideology here, but I don't know that strapping on a giant prosthetic is gender ideology. I don't know that that alone makes a gender ideology claim. And if you want to be a
It's
woman,
not sexual. That's a funny thing that transgender advocates always say. It's not sexual. It's their identity, really, because your badungas are like knocking into me. I'm like
yeah,
falling over. You're knocking me over
I,
with your breasts.
I'm
Okay.
traumatized from a
Yeah.
computer screen looking at these pictures. But imagine
Yeah.
if you were in a, so I worked in high schools, and I worked in shop classes, and I worked in an old school auto class, old school. The
Mhm.
guy who was the teacher was like an old school Toyota shop, like mechanic manager. And he
Okay.
was, and we had a girl who always liked to be very dressed to the nines and had nails done and all this other stuff. And she came in one day in high heels, and he sent her home because, and like a shirt that was, had things that could get caught up by a spinning thing, right? So it was like
Oh, okay.
a shirt had
The
like decorations on it. Yeah,
tassels and
tassely
stuff.
thing,
Yeah.
whatever,
Okay.
like decorations. I don't know. And he said, you can't wear these pieces of clothes. Like, you've been told about these things. You can put on overalls and put on like flat shoes, go to your locker and get like gym shoes and come back. Or like go get changed or at home or whatever you want to do, but you can't wear these things in class. And I feel like if a girl came in wearing a prosthetic breast, that she said, I feel better like this. This is my gender identity. Or boy, it doesn't matter, male or female. In that guy's classroom, not that long ago, they would get sent home in the same way for the same reason, safety, right? And so what I was seeing, the school is hiding behind gender ideology, but there's a whole lot of other problems that are obvious violations of student protocol, student dress protocol, safety protocol, all sorts of violations, all sorts of concerning things. And we can't talk about any of it because they're invoking the gender ideology thing. And I think that that's just wild. Like, this is Canada, right? And you're not allowed to ask, man. And if you ask, you are the problem. Sorry. And that's wild.
So, but once again, like, we brought this through the lens of acceleration,
Mm-hmm.
and once again, I think this is a good thing because we actually had Maxime Bernier tweeting about something to do with the trans ideology. Like, he
Yeah.
was actually like talking about it and like, wow, these guys are perverts. And it's like, okay, finally we're getting to
We're
some
getting,
social,
yeah.
starting to taste like social conservatism a bit in here, like that. And that's what needs to happen, right? Like there needs to be people talking about this.
Well, and I want to
Um
be
because
I want to,
it's literally in your face at this point. It's like, hey,
well, right. It's an
call me
inescapable.
ma'am. Yeah.
Call me ma'am. Well, I feel like school should be a place where you are not met by something that is
not not met by two massive basketball
well, how do you deal
sized
like how do you deal with that? I
tank
know in the
knockers.
90s. Yeah, so I graduated high school in the late 90s.
Hmm.
And if there was a teacher who was wearing a prosthetic like that, and in I don't think it would last a period. I think somebody would come in and the principal would be in for the day, and that teacher it wouldn't last because they'd something would happen.
Hmm.
But if classes were exposed to that, there'd be some serious questions and all sorts of stuff. And now I think that it's really interesting how kids being exposed to this, nobody's talking about the impacts of that and the social impacts and all of the rest of that. Like this is somebody's, and people have described this. I'm not using my words to describe this, but this is a kink, and it looks like this guy is having unwilling participants in his kink, and the school not doing anything about that is a very big problem. But again, they're using a shield of gender ideology to shield him from that, and that's just how do you get around that?
That's actually this is a really good opportunity actually to bring up the whole kink question, because
Yes.
I actually had a debate on TikTok live recently with this trans person, and they kept going like, on the one topic, they're like, no, it's not sexual, it's not sexual. And it's like, you really don't think this is at all sexual? And I think this is a great example of like, what like, okay, you're going to say it's not sexual, and then you're also going to say it's not some sort of mental illness either, when this person needs to feel comfortable. In order to feel comfortable, they need these like cartoonishly big tits. Like that's how they're going to feel comfortable with themselves, is to have
Mhm.
cartoonishly massive knockers in front of children to do their job. Like it's either a mental illness or it's sexual or it's both. Like you can't say it's like neither. Like that's ridiculous.
Well, there's clearly something going on. And I mean, maybe it's not this person's fault. Well, I mean, this is, I said to my wife, I was walking,
that's such a funny way to put it.
I
There's
mean, like
clearly
there's something,
something going on with that
but
person. Yeah.
so up until now, presumably, like this just happened this year. So up until now, this guy has been going to work. And I mean, maybe he's a younger person because the media misreported who it was. They said it's not um, Stephen Hanna. It's not that person. It's uh, uh, something. The actual last name is Lemieux, but it doesn't really matter. Um, but this person has been going to work up till now, not like this. And then something happened. I don't know what, but they decided that this is what they're going to do, and they presumably could read the student dress code. They could presumably read the shop safety code that they would have to teach students. So to me, there's red flags over and above the ginormous breasts that should be dealt with by the school. And what leads to somebody saying, I've been wearing these breasts around at home, and that just feels better to me. So I'm going to wear them to work, right? If you said that to your like partners, you're getting your tea together in the morning or your coffee, right? And your partner comes down and you're like, so what's the purple shirt today with the nipples? Like you'd mention it, right? Don't you think somebody would say something?
I feel like the areolas is actually a whole topic in itself, because it's like one thing to have
Sure.
huge knockers, but it's another thing to be like, you can see my nipple from a mile away. You can literally see the shape and contours of my nipple from a mile away.
From
Like
pictures taken across the classroom.
yeah, like that's
That's a nipple.
yeah, it's not sexual. Yeah, it's not. It's just a gender ideology thing. It's like, are you kidding me?
Well,
Like
okay,
this
and
is
again, like I've worked in schools, and I said this morning that I've known people who got told like you got to go get a sweater, get a coat, get a jacket, get a something over, and like they were wearing a tank top and jeans type deal, and it's like you work with teenage boys, you understand,
yeah. And
right? And so like
I do want to say something just to be like really, really brutally urgent on this issue. Um, can you imagine being a kid trying to learn with that going on, with
yeah,
that in
well,
your face? And no,
right,
but
no,
let me finish here.
sorry, carry
Like,
on.
to give you an example, I know some young men who are in their early 20s who are struggling with masturbation, and let me tell you, they've told me the types of pornography, explicit materials that they look at, and it's really weird stuff that is like not natural, like massive knockers. And it's like, to think that this, like, oh yeah, it's just this regular gender ideology, like we don't have enough respect for sex and just how powerful it is, and how it messes with our hearts, our minds, our souls, our bodies, everything. And
I mean, that's a deep topic to get in. Yeah. But I mean, you're not wrong. There's a lot of, well, like your body can be tricked into thinking that it's productive when you're doing stuff like that. Right. And because your body is made to procreate. So you think I'm being very successful, but not really. Right? It's a trick and a trap. But
I guess I'm just more and more of like the Bible thumping perspective, where it's like just exposing people to something like that. It's like, that's not just an innocent thing. That's not just like a thing, not a thing that, oh yeah, no, who cares? It's like, there's probably people who are not scarred by this, but like, it's probably something that's like really, they're like, wow, like I still remember the day that this person walked in with those, like, I still have nightmares.
Yeah. Well, like I was going to say, are you trying to draw a direct line between the material that's available online and maybe the surfacing of this kind of stuff, or just like that it's more socially acceptable to do that? I don't. Do you think this is socially acceptable?
There's certainly a connection, but I'm more focused on, it's not just this whole, oh, gender, whatever. Like there needs to be a larger conversation that's had here with sex in general, with how it is treated in the media, and how no one is really protecting kids properly.
Well, there's a lot of messaging in songs is aimed at like strong women and very subservient men, which is not really how things work. A lot of women would prefer men are more dominant or taking the lead and whatever. And I'm not saying all women. I'm sure they're very, very nice.
Andrew Tate. He's just like Andrew Tate. Cancel Mark for all of us. He's just like Andrew Tate. Take just his making YouTube
generalities.
Wow.
But no, I mean, like it's one of those things that biology does drive things, and culture is pushing women to behave in a way that is not necessarily counter to their biology, but there's been a lot of perversion and changing of there's a lot of women who wait until they're 30 now to have babies instead of having babies in it used to be 18, 19, 20 people were having their first and second child. And I did a whole big study on birth rates in Canada in 2019. You could probably still find the video on Odyssey or something like that. But that big chunk of women who are having babies shifted from 17, 18, 19, 20 to 26 to 30. And it was shifting up as I was doing the research. It might even be closer to 30 than I'm remembering. But anyway, regardless, there's a concerted effort to make that secondary. And I mean, like the whole messaging of like, don't have a kid because of climate change and all that is crazy. Sorry, just the idea that no man is good enough as well. Like this whole idea of the perfect Prince Charming and love is meant to be. And if he doesn't like you at your worst, then don't expect him that his best.
My best. Yeah.
Yeah. Men and women are complementary. It's not supposed to be like a woman can compete with a man, because generally they can't, but a man can't give birth. A man, there are things that women can do that men cannot do, and there are things that men can do that women can't do. Complementary, right? Not competition.
Yeah,
that fly.
You're canceled for saying that.
Oh, it's a
men and women are exactly the same. There's no difference. No, I'm kidding, of course. But I think the important distinction is like I brought up sex earlier, and I think there's almost like there's no longer an emphasis on family and procreation sex. Like sex is not about procreation anymore. And the case in point,
I think you can have like fun procreational sex. I think you could, but not recreational.
I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive.
Okay,
but
all right.
I'm saying like, of course not. We're gonna have a baby and that's that. Like, I don't
enjoy. I'm not gonna enjoy this.
Yeah, I'm not gonna enjoy this. I don't want to hear any fussing out of you. Okay. I'm just as uncomfortable as you are.
We need an air.
Yeah. but I feel like there's a fine line between, maybe not there's a fine line. There's no emphasis at all, I think, for sex being about procreation. And it's more sex is all about this sort of degenerate
It,
indulgence, you know?
empowerment. I've taken it to be like you're empowered, right? Like the whole false equivalence of
That's the
men
lie
are.
about it. That's
I,
the
well, I
lie
know,
about it,
right? That's what
sure.
I mean. They're
Yeah.
selling that whole you're empowered now, and I think that that's the lie. And oh, there was a woman who was making a really good argument, and I can't remember the argument now, but there are a few people who take on this lie, and they do a really good job at dismantling it. And but yeah, there's a lot that I think people take for granted or look at in year 2022 that is possibly
Sure. And it's
well it's like bring the asteroid. They're looking at it like, yeah, okay, I'm done. Like we're not, it's very
mhm,
hopeless, right?
right.
Glass half empty type deal.
Yeah. And I think, it's very ironic when it comes to like the woman's perspective, especially. It's like, how dare you just say I'm here to make babies? No, I'm here to be empowered. What? And just only have sex for gratification? Like that's,
Well, and people forget
I
that
don't know.
there's degeneration. Like as you age, your body goes through change, just like you went through puberty. Your body goes through changes later on in life too, right? Like there's menopause for women, but there's other changes, hormonal changes, and all sorts of stuff that
Hmm.
happens throughout as you age. And people will feel differently about something than they did at 16, at 26, and then at 36 they'll feel differently about things and go, oh man, I didn't understand, but now I understand, right? And things change, man. Like and so if you're, you know 21 or something like that, and make a decision that can never be reversed and you don't understand the full implications, you might regret that at 31, right? Like, and people just don't get that.
Yeah, and I think a trend that's happening with my generation is people are like messing around in their 20s, they're having fun, they're kind of having all sorts of partners, and they see having a family and settling down as like this burden. And
Mm-hmm.
what sucks is like they're not really going to see how horrible of a decision that was until they're like in their mid 40s, until they
Yep.
like really see
Yep.
what a bad decision that was.
Yep.
And by that time, you know, I don't
See,
know, man.
the funny part is by that time there's all sorts of crazy potential unintended consequences. Because if you've got a man who's still fertile and decides, oh man, I made a mistake. Yeah, I'm gonna go find somebody who I can have a child with or whatever, right? And but women at that age can't as easily solve that problem, right? You
Right.
see what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
it's a very interesting social experiment where I think there's going to be a fallout effect where people are going to not find themselves, well, find themselves kind of the victim of the fallout of this.
Yeah, and they're either going to change their ways and kind of, be very graceful with their sort of like where they made mistakes, or they're going to double down
No, they'll
and
double
become,
down. It's your
yeah, yeah.
fault. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the
and
alt right fault.
yeah, exactly. They'll become even more bigger,
Bitter.
crazy,
Yeah.
bitter, crazy socialists or whatever. It was the
Yep.
white man that did this. Um, it
Terrible.
it was you who talked me into having no kids. No, that was the propaganda machine that you're obsessed with, actually, if I told
Yeah.
you that. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah. It's a very
Um,
interesting, insidious campaign that's running right now. Very scary stuff.
sure is. All right, so that's enough about those big knockers. What was our other story again?
The campaign, so COVID and the Toronto ad campaign that
Mm,
used exclusively South Asian people
hmm,
in Toronto, which was really weird. I thought, like, this is notably like single race, and
mm-hmm,
it's like, anyway, I just thought it was weird. Because usually it's, they usually show big diverse, because it's Toronto, there's lots of people you can cycle through, so they usually show a very diverse group of people. This was not that. And the whole message of the ad was this kid was inside and she wants to go outside to play, and she asks her mom, but her mom says no because there's still something going around. And the ad says, like, go, kids belong
thanks,
outside, go
thanks.
get vaccinated.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, go get them vaccinated. And there's another ad that talks about babies, and the baby, it implies that the baby shouldn't be around unvaccinated adults. So that,
Or that you can't be around the baby because the baby's not yet vaccinated. because it said, oh, injections have been approved to 6 months to
Oh
12
yeah,
months
oh,
old.
jeepers
Yeah,
creepers.
yeah,
So it's even worse than I thought.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I did a TikTok on this, and essentially, like, you know, this is why freedom fighters, this is why people like me and you are still such like up in arms. First of all, there's still a lot of mandates that still exist. A lot of
Mhm.
nurses still aren't back to work. A lot of people are still on pay without leave, and there's a lot of signs that they're going to be mandating more and more boosters. Um, but there's also this propaganda that is pro segregation. This is
Mhm.
pro segregation propaganda. The implication of both of these ads are you can't interact with other people that don't have the injection. And that is the same rhetoric from peak pandemic. Hey,
Yeah.
you can't go to Thanksgiving. Hey,
Yeah.
you can't interact with other people that don't have this pharmaceutical product pumping through their veins. It's like,
It's
oh yeah,
still
it's and the thing is, what's like, this flies in the face of this attitude that a lot of normies have right now, which is, oh, you know, it's over. Pandemic's over. I'm so glad we're past that. And it's like, yeah, well, why are they pushing this propaganda? You think it's over? Like, bro.
I don't think it's over. I'm still, I can't believe that it happened. That's the first thing.
The
Like I can't
ad?
know the everything. Like I'm still, when I look back at the ad, remember the COVID monster? Like there were so many hilarious bits and terrible things that happened. Like we had Alberta Health Services shutting down churches and restaurants. We had
Oh,
mounted
that
police
propaganda
response.
from Alberta, you mean? Like
Well,
the
I'm just
ad.
saying the whole COVID thing is this wild ride that is just it's like a slow motion exploding bomb that triggered a response from the government that did more harm, that triggered them to do quantitative easing, which did more harm, which has triggered rate increases, which is now doing more harm, right? And it seems like there's interest
And
and
then we need to all get these injections, which is doing
more harm. And so it's
ah,
one of those things.
we're on
It's one
YouTube,
of those
bro.
things that
Watch yourself.
holy smoke, can't say that. You can't say that. They'll cancel you. But
Actually,
it's one of those
although
things that
while we're on that topic, the
yeah.
chief medical officer of Ontario did admit that oh yeah, if you're of this age group and you're a man, young man, 19 and 25, yeah, there is a 1 in 5,000 chance that you might develop myocarditis. So like
But
there
I
is
think it's even
risks.
more than that. I think it's even like one in less than 3,000.
If
I
they're
heard as well.
admitting, yeah, if they're
1 in 5.
admitting that
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
yeah, if they're admitting that much,
Yep.
bruh. Because like, dude, even if that is true, and assuming it's only young men, assuming it's only that age group, that's still like a public school's worth of people who have myocarditis now. So it's
Well,
like,
it's a lot of people. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like that's assuming it only affects that age group, and assuming it only affects men. Like, you know, if it's everyone younger than that, it's like a high school worth of people, and if it's women and men too, then it's like two high schools. It's like, you know, 2,500 kids who now have a heart condition in Canada.
Yep.
So
And the mandates haven't left. They're still spending money on promotion. They're still spending money on influencers. They're still spending money on anti-hate. Oh, sorry, but they are. Um, it doesn't have to do with COVID. I just thought I'd mention it. They're just spending money on it, wasting money on it. But
mm,
we're being our infrastructure, our tax dollars are being used to push, and the government itself is taking steps with bad policy that hamstring Canada, that don't really help with recovery. They lied when they said that the Bank of Canada is not going to raise the interest rates, and
mm,
now they're panic raising them because they've printed so much money they can't control the inflation anymore. And I mean, food inflation is wild. So it just seems like all of these crises could be avoided by sane policy, and they're not. And the longer they're not, and the longer they just say anybody who disagrees with these policies is an extremist, it just doesn't look
mm.
like they're seriously trying to solve the problem to me. Oh, are you paused?
Yeah, there I'm back.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely, definitely. And we've talked a lot about this a lot on the show,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I don't want to say this is all orchestrated, but it certainly seems like they are intentionally messing things up. It seems like they're
Well,
going out of their way to
yeah.
make things worse. And yeah, the whole trust the science thing has just become a very kind of ironic statement, right? It's like trust the science. You mean ignore everything except for your science.
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't listen to anything except what the Canadian government puts out.
Yeah. Or you're a terrorist, by the way.
Our truth is the only truth, or you're a white supremacist.
It's funny that they're still going with that, right? I was talking to someone who's like,
Yeah.
oh well, they're gonna come around and like it's people are gonna admit they were wrong and they're gonna like realize everything that's gone wrong, and
No.
I'm like,
Do you know why?
I have bad news for you. Like
Yeah,
these
like,
people are
oh,
never
oh.
gonna admit they were wrong, ever. So that's not gonna happen. And those
Yeah.
people are beholden to the media, and the media is not gonna do that either. So it's gonna get uglier before it gets
Yeah,
better, I think.
this is not a short, like, oh man, I can't believe that we lied to you for the last 2 years.
Mm,
Sorry. Like, it's not, that's
yeah.
not gonna happen. No, the
That,
reason that they're not gonna admit fault is because it would open them up to liability. You did what? I
mm.
lost my business. You knew this was not blah blah blah. Yeah, I lost
But
my business. I lost my house. I lost my this. I lost my
but I do think the
I
era
lost
we're
my
living
partner. Right.
I do think that the era that we're living through right now is almost like, I want to say like a 2014, 2015 sort of thing. Like it's leading up to the election of Trump, and there's a lot of like red pilling going on. Like I think this season specifically, there's going to be a new
This season of America.
no, this season, as in the season where they're gonna, people think it's over, but they're still gonna be pushing a
Oh,
lot of like weird pandemic stuff. I think this is gonna be a season of more people getting red pilled, and which is great because it's a new batch. It's a new batch of like freedom fighters. It's a new batch of people connecting with you know, joining the fray and joining the fight, right? So it's a good thing.
yeah, but it's such a perverted, like, there's the messaging on the other side is so perverted. Like, they go after people and they misrepresent people's ideas and
Yeah,
statements, and
they're evil. Yeah, they deceive. That's
yeah.
all they can do is deceive.
Yeah,
They
well,
can't
right,
tell
but
the truth. They can't build
their
anything.
lies are very convincing, and so people just fall in line, and they're pushed by the similar lies are pushed by the media in a way that messaging through conversational shows like this and my show, whatever, um, has a hard time disseminating, especially in the climate that it seems like they control more and more, like YouTube or whatever. So it's just hard to, um, when it seems so like we were talking about the giant breasts, and it seems obvious that a teacher shouldn't be dressed like that to deliver education to students. And it's not just the breasts, it's what the breasts represent. It's the other bad choices too. What happens if their wig
I
gets caught?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way to look at it, which can make it seem daunting, but also seem less daunting at the same time, is to kind of look at the long game. Like it's not necessarily about, okay, we're going to get the next politician in who's going to get us the next better policy to improve our current situation. Like the real balance of this war is in the generation that's growing up and currently being indoctrinated. If this entire generation is lost to indoctrination, then it is game over, because this indoctrinated generation will have no sort of connection to tradition, no sort of connection to the values that freedom, all these things that we're fighting for now. Like if they don't even know what freedom is to fight for it, then they're not going to be even question anything else that
And
comes down the pipe, right?
that's what
So
North
it's
Korea is all about. Yeah.
so yeah, it's really in the balance of this younger generations growing up, because it's like, if picture everyone that's like aged 12 to 18, and like this indoctrination goes on for an entire another 10 years, and those kids who are 10 are now 20, and they are like, pro mask Nazis. Like, can you imagine how horrific that would be like 10 years down the road?
Yeah.
Like that's what we need to avoid. So
Yeah.
like that's kind of that's the way I look at it. As
It
long as we
doesn't look
can kind
good.
of
That's what I'm
save
trying to tell you. Like,
as long as we can save the younger generation from this indoctrination. And I have a lot of faith in the younger generation. They're funnier than us, they're cooler, and
the cooler.
a lot of them are coming out as like,
Ain't nobody cooler than me.
hardcore Christians, man. No, seriously. There's a lot of young people who are like coming out as like
Very,
not
yeah.
a
Well,
little
that
bit
happened in Russia
conservative. Like
too.
they're coming
Yeah.
out as like very, very conservative,
Yeah, that happened in
because
Russia too. I don't know why.
yeah.
I don't know, like I
and
don't know
yeah,
what
and
caused that or triggered that
well,
kind of movement.
it's the typical pendulum swinging, like when Christianity was shoved down people's throats, that's when the kids would rebel and they would be like more like hippies or whatever and like rock and roll and whatever.
But I
And now it's being down shoved people's throats.
right,
Wokeism,
but
degeneracy is being shoved down people's
but
throats.
I don't know that we're necessarily, so like when you're talking about Christianity, you're talking about like in the 1980s and 1990s and like the
I think
the
more 1950s.
1950s. Okay, even then,
Yeah.
the ideology that was being promoted, maybe it was more pure in the 1950s than it was in the 1980s or 90s when I was paying attention. But it seems like what the church represents isn't what the church used to represent, and it used to represent something much different, and it's been turned, especially more so under Francis than any of the other modern popes in my
Well,
recollection. But I'm
I
probably
mean, and yeah, organized religion has always had a lot of problems, right? But
yeah, right. Like that's the
or
other part.
but organized religions still have always kind of created this sort of purity, this sort of like ideal of purity that allowed the youth and the hippie movement to like rebel against it. So
Mhm.
although these organized religions weren't perfect,
Yeah,
uh unfortunately, by saying, "Oh, you're just like a backwards, you're just a backwards Christian who's like very oppressive." We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're throwing out objective truth. We're throwing out kind of like the natural order of a man and woman. Like we're throwing everything out with the bathwater to make way for postmodern
yeah.
horror. You know,
Yeah, well, and
so
it would be horror because we just don't get it. Like as humans, we just don't. I don't think we can encapsulate everything correctly, especially when we think that we can just create genders and all sorts of stuff that that
yeah,
are like the. Well, I mean, it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a much bigger topic.
You're not a they them demi boy. You're just a unique individual with the first
Yeah,
name, and that's all it should be.
we're all
Yeah,
unique snowflakes.
yeah. How about instead of you having your own pronouns, you just have your own first name?
Yeah, bro, you could be anything. I
Whoa, you have
remember
your very own name. Oh
when
my
I was a
god,
kid, I thought the name Bullet was like the coolest name. I was like, I'll be called Bullet.
nice. Oh, you're bullet gendered.
Yes.
Oh, oh
Bullet
my
self. Yeah.
god. I'm Bull Bulls. That's the
No, that'd be
pronouns.
weird. That'd be weird. No, I'm glad I don't play that game. It's a weird game. And I rejected it right away. I thought what is this? This is not
Oh,
something that
hey,
I'm interested in.
don't Mark, don't reject who you are.
It feels very culty.
If
The
you're a
whole
bullet, if
pronouns
you're a
thing.
bullet person,
No, no, no. I
don't
was saying when I
suppress
was
it. Don't
five.
suppress who you truly are.
Don't misrepresent my words.
If you feel like a bullet on the inside,
No,
then that's
because I
totally
was
okay.
fast, like a bullhead, because I could
Oh,
run
okay.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like 6. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah, let's end
Um,
it there.
final thoughts. Bullets are faster than Speeding
Yeah,
Bullet or Superman. Bullet.
yeah. There's only two genders.
It's wearing my Superman shirt.
Actually, while I was on the debate with this transgender person, they're like, yeah, gender is a non-binary. And I got them to clarify that, oh, but it's bimodal. And I'm like, that's really similar though, because we were talking about intersex and everything, but it's like, yeah, it's pretty well. If you look at the majority of everything, it's pretty well too, though. Like I'll give you that there's like the intersex thing going on, but it's like it's pretty well too. It's pretty well a two, like statistically majority. It's there's two genders, and even no, it's
Well, I mean,
bimodal. No, it's binary. Yeah,
yeah, okay. So
close
like
enough.
if there's binary people and then non-binary, you're still in a binary system, buddy. So sorry.
Mm, mm, mm.
Checkmate.
Yeah, and you're just somewhere in between the two if you're intersex, right?
Well, yeah,
Keyword
intersex has
two,
a whole,
keyword
yeah,
two,
right. But
right?
intersex has a whole, there's a whole thing. Um, Typically, my goodness, so there's usually well-known or diagnosable reasons for that anomaly, right? Intersex or like there's XY chromosome. You can have like the wrong chromosomes.
well,
It can
yeah,
be like there's a whole bunch of different
that
reasons
is
that
the
you can be
important
defined that way.
right. The important thing about intersex is that it is a biological reality. That is like you might
Right.
have parts from male and female. There
Right.
is a there's an anatomical, there's a biological
Right.
reality to it, which makes it a very real category when it
Right.
comes
Of
to
course.
talking about this. Yeah.
And so like people who are dealing with that is are should be respected, etc., as should everyone. The whole
Mm-hmm.
problem with what we're talking about is when people go into schools or target children with an ideology that says you can turn into a different gender. I don't think we have the technology for that. I've never seen anything that's proven we've had the technology for that, but we're telling people that we can do this as if it's like something you can do on a Sunday afternoon. And this is not true. And so like I have a really big problem with that. That's the core
No,
of it.
definitely,
If you're a
definitely.
25-year-old person who wants to be called madam and you want to strap on breasts in your spare time and go to, after dark parties or, shopping in them, whatever, so long as you're not hurting other people, I don't have a problem. The shopping thing, if you're doing it to get off on people's reaction, that's a problem, right? Like
Yeah.
your intention matters there. So, but it's one of those things where it's just like the reality of the world is that people have kinks and they're going to do things like that. And we have to have enough discernment to make sure that our kids are safe from people who would pervert the system or abuse the system in that way. That's my final words. Where can they find you?
Find me on YouTube, Greg Wycliffe, Instagram, Greg Wycliffe, Twitter, and TikTok. Still have the TikTok account at GDUB. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Always, man. It's always nice to talk to you. And you can find my stuff at CanadaPoly.com. Don't check YouTube anymore. Not for the next 7 days. And probably after that, don't bother either. Because they
Speaking
kick me off.
moistly.
Okay, I'll stop. Thanks
Speaking
for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
moistly, keep 2 meters apart.